But really, it's about being strategic. If you have a hormone-based weight loss resistance, or you feel like menopause, now again, diabetes does fall into this category because remember, insulin is a hormone. If you're having menopause, issues of fertility, issues with low libido, I want you to be really, really diligent and give yourself the full 28 days to focus on healing the body as a whole. Hi, I'm Haylie Pomroy, and on this DVD, I want to talk about specific health issues and ways to supercharge your program to combat metabolic imbalances like diabetes, high cholesterol, hypertension, issues with mood, memory, and cognition, and hormonal imbalances. We want to use food to heal the body. We want to use food to heal the metabolism. And so in the 28 days of the fast metabolism diet, we use this 2-2-3 cycle that rotates or cycles between high glycemic fruits and carbs, low glycemic vegetables and heavy proteins so that we can build muscle, and healthy fats so that we can stimulate and create the hormones of the metabolism. But there's individuals that come into my office and that are in our community that have already been diagnosed with diseases that are related to the metabolism. So let's take diabetes, for instance. One of the things that I always encourage individuals is always partner with your doctor. Bring in the book, let them know about the plan, and talk to them about health concerns that he may have with you in doing this program. Diabetes specifically, we always want to make sure that you're actively testing your blood sugars while you go through the fast metabolism diet. Because diabetes, as we know, is a disorder of the metabolism. As we start to change the metabolism and heal the metabolism, we want to make sure that your blood sugars become more and more stable and that the doctors are watching closely what's going on with your medications. A lot of times when we're dealing with individuals that are maybe more of a fragile diabetic, we look at things specifically in each phase of the fast metabolism diet, and sometimes we make little adaptations or suggestions that people can look at as they monitor their blood sugars. The goal is to get the metabolism to a place where we need as little intervention as possible. So this is why it's so important that you're actively testing your blood sugars if you have diabetes. So there's a couple times, and your doc can talk to you about this too, that I really like to see and have you understand what's going on metabolically when you have diabetes. It's very common with diabetes for doctors to have their patients test their blood sugar first thing in the morning, or what we call a fasting blood sugar. An interesting thing to see about a diabetic client, though, when we're looking at ways to feed them and ways to help heal their metabolism, is seeing what they do post a meal or after a meal. Sometimes docs have people tested at 1 or 2 hours. We usually, when we're looking at what foods to add in, check it at about the 2-hour mark. So maybe consider doing this, making a chart on your meal map and really looking and observing your blood sugars so that we can see how we need to alter things from a food perspective. The other thing that's really interesting to me with a diabetic client is to take a blood sugar right before bed and compare that to your fasting blood sugar. So for example, if right before bed you're at a 114 and when you wake up in the morning you're a 145, we always wonder, where did that body get the sugar in the middle of the night? Unless you're sneaking into the fridge, which I know you're not. The body's getting that sugar from the glycogen storage, or the sugar storage is in the muscle. If that happens with you, it lets me know that we're not nourishing you enough right before bed to inhibit that process. It's one of the biggest problems with diabetes. When we start utilizing medication to stabilize our blood sugar, we want to make sure that our body's not scavenging the muscle just to get more sugar. So sometimes with diabetics, especially in phase 1, you have an option to put some protein in at breakfast. Typically with our diabetic clients, we have you put a little bit of lean protein in with that complex carb from the oatmeal. And we also have you pick a little bit of the lower glycemic fruits, even though this phase is all about quick acting sugar. But your body is in a disease state where it can't keep its sugars balanced, so we've got to be a little more tender. The other thing with individuals that are diabetic that we watch is that sometimes in phase 1, we'll add a little protein right before bed. Especially if you're one of those people that, let's say for example, you go to bed and your blood sugar is 114 and you wake up in the morning and it's 147. If you find that to be the case, sometimes simply a couple pieces of turkey, a little bit of chicken, sometimes some egg whites right before bed helps the body support and nourish and protect the muscle so that it doesn't access sugar from there. So it's something to look at from a diabetic perspective. Sometimes individuals, and again, it depends on how fragile your diabetes has become. Sometimes in phase 2, the body, because it has a hard time regulating the blood sugar, the body finds that that low glycemic vegetables and that heavy protein, that sometimes the blood sugars can even dip a little bit low. So I tell individuals to make sure that you're doing lots of lemons and limes during that phase. And as long as you're not on a statin drug, sometimes we even add a little bit of grapefruit. But you want to test your blood sugars and you want to listen to your body and what your body's telling it. But also make sure you partner with your doctor. If your blood sugars are consistently coming out low, sometimes we need to renegotiate with them how much medication's on board. The other thing to think about in phase 3, if you're diabetic, is that oftentimes diabetics have a very difficult time accessing fat for fuel. It's one of the reasons why so many diabetics get midsection weight gain, they lose their muscle, they don't have as efficient memory and cognition, because insulin is a hormone, okay? And so what we want to be careful with a diabetic is making sure that we have enough vegetables in our snacks and our fat-based snacks, our healthy fat-based snacks, so that we can actually access those fats. So whenever I have a client that comes in and they've been pre-diagnosed diabetic, I always say, you know, we say veggies are optional in those snacks, but really if an individual has that much of a difficulty regulating their blood sugars, it's really important that we put those veggies in with those snacks. The other thing to think about with an individual that has diabetes as we're working through the healing process is, and as you're checking your blood sugars, is looking at that dinner in phase 3. You can have a complex carb all 3 of those days. I want you to make sure that you're not necessarily doing a grain-based carb all 3 of those. Maybe switch to something like sweet potatoes or beans. Don't do, wild rice and quinoa maybe every night. But again, listen to your body, partner with your doctor. The whole goal is for us to get the body to have less and less intervention. So that's my little twist on when we're working with diabetes. Let's talk about individuals that have been pre-diagnosed or diagnosed before they walk in the door with high cholesterol. So even individuals that are on cholesterol medications and their labs come back all shiny, we want to realize or recognize that the issue that created a high cholesterol or a pooling of the cholesterol in the blood hasn't been resolved. Again, like I say, if it was resolved or if it was healed, we'd be able to stop our medication today. But we can't, because when we do, our cholesterol levels just soar again. So cholesterol, it's so important for 2 things to happen. One, we need to really support the liver a lot. So phase 2 is going to become really, really important for you. All of the phases are important, but I want you to give extra time and attention and extra focus during those 2 days a week. You have to make sure that you have tons and tons of vegetables. And the other thing that's really important is in order to stimulate that HDL, the good cholesterol, the one that goes in and binds with the blood, the bad cholesterol in your arteries and pulls it out, is you want to really flood the body with lots of garlic, lots of basil, lots of peppers, cracked red peppers, bell peppers, you name it, as many as you can get into the system. Really, really helpful. The other thing that you want to do is add as much fiber as possible, so as much vegetables as possible. Mushrooms, spinach, kale, all of those good things. You really want to be very, very diligent on those 2 days. The other thing that's so important with cholesterol is really making sure that you're diligent about spacing out your food, that you are eating within 30 minutes of waking, that you're never going past that 4-hour mark. In fact, with individuals that have high cholesterol, I'm usually pretty much a stickler for trying to get food in every 3 hours. And so, all of the phases are important, but really when you're trying to get that cholesterol level down, when docs come in and they say, you got 45 days or 90 days or 30 days sometimes to get this level down, or that's it, we're going on statins. We really focus on that. You still only want to keep it about 2 days a week during the 28 days of rehab, but make sure that you're getting in that weight-bearing exercise. Make sure you're adding tons of herbs and spices, and on all the phases, be really, really diligent about your sequencing of your food, that you don't go 4 or 5 or 6 hours without eating. I want to talk a little bit about hypertension and how to kind of super support yourself if this is an issue you've been dealing with. So hypertension kind of falls into 2 categories. We'll talk about one first. One is where your body has a hard time regulating your blood pressure. So it's a lot more kidney and adrenal related. So with this particular kind of hypertension, I'm just going to contrast that for a second, where it's hypertension that's caused because of a hardening of the arteries. We're going to talk about the first one, maybe the adrenal one. You're going to really work on phase 1 a lot. So, there's 7 days in a week, and I get it. I would love it if you would just, be a perfect angel 7 days a week for 28 days. But if you're dealing with hypertension, I really want you to give a lot of focus and attention to phase 1. I want to make sure that you're using the highest of the high-glycemic fruits, so do things like mangoes, the stone fruits, pineapples as well, watermelon. I also want you to really implement 2 days of stress reduction. So yes, you're doing at least 1 day of cardio. If you can do 2, great. But I want you to employ some sort of a stress reduction technique. Meditation, dry skin brushing, I guess I would say essential oils, chamomile teas, anything that, passiflora is another really good one, anything that can soothe or lower the stress. The other thing that I tell people to do, and this is kind of a unique thing, especially with hypertension, let's say that you were to take a week and you were to say my most 2 stressful days are Saturday and Sunday, or my most 2 stressful days are Monday, Tuesday. Go ahead and move your plan around a little bit so that your least stressful days are when you have phase 1. So for example, let's say that when you walk into the office on Mondays, it's crazy. Don't do phase 1 on Monday, Tuesday. Go ahead and move it to Saturday and Sunday, where you can intentionally plan your stress reduction techniques. Or let's say Friday is just, crazy, and you want to make sure that's not anywhere around there. You can move your meal map around to support you. Let's talk a little bit about mood, memory, and cognition. So a couple things are really important when we're working specifically on the brain. There's a lot of things that need to happen here. One, we've got to make sure that we're very efficient at detoxifying toxins. The fat-soluble toxins have been so linked now, studies, to mood and memory and cognition. And so making sure that you're actually accessing that fat but voiding it out. So again, in phase 2, making sure that there's enough fiber so that that fat doesn't get recycled, the toxins in the fat don't get recycled, but that your body actually voids those and gets rid of them once and for all. You might consider taking, a little bit of support, making sure that your fruits and vegetables are really high in vitamin C, which is a natural chelant, which means it helps toxins come out of the body really efficiently. Like we talked about before, you want to do things like asparagus, which stimulate glutathione, which allows the liver to facilitate detoxification. You want to make sure you use foods that are high in folic acid, like spinach and kale and parsley, because that'll help allow the body to facilitate detoxification. And then the other thing is that you've got to make sure that the proteins are really accessible, that those can actually go through and through the blood flow and actually feed the brain. Proteins and fats are crucial. And so a couple things that you want to do is check your pH. If you're dealing with mood, memory, and cognition, there's a lot of issues that I really try to emphasize using our pH tool. Inflammation and mood, memory, and cognition are probably the 2 most important reasons to implement testing your pH. It is so important when individuals are having difficulty utilizing receptor sites, producing receptor sites with memory and cognition, that the body's ecosystem is at a stable level. So it might mean that you need to do more cardio, or it might mean that you need to do more weight bearing, but your pH is going to let us know. Let's talk about the last one, which is hormone imbalances. So hormone imbalances actually phase 1 through 3 is so important for all of those. We talked a lot about phase 3 really helping you unleash the burn, really helping your body secrete those hormones for the estrogens, progesterones, testosterones, the hormones associated with the adrenal glands and creating stability, where the pituitary and the thyroid and the ovaries and the testicles all, communicate and talk together. But really, it's about being strategic. If you have a hormone-based weight loss resistance, or you feel like menopause, now again, diabetes does fall into this category because remember, insulin is a hormone. If you're having menopause, issues of fertility, issues with low libido, I want you to be really, really diligent and give yourself the full 28 days to focus on healing the body as a whole. Couple things to think about with hormone imbalances, especially with individuals that are either dealing with hormone-based disease like estrogen receptor positive breast cancers, or individuals that are dealing with the joys of menopause, or men that have a low testosterone level, a high E2 level in men, anything that's hormonally so off that it's really altering our chemistry, creating some form of disease. I want you to think of a couple things. One, when you go through phase 3 and you're eating all of the healthy fats, I want you to consider pulling out on the last day of phase 3. So if you're doing a traditional week, that would be Friday, pulling out the carb in that last meal. So replacing maybe your wild rice for stir-fry vegetables. And a lot of times what we're doing there is I want to flood the body at that, give it that last push in the week with all of the fats and lower the glycemic value just a little bit so that you can access those building blocks a little bit more efficiently. So that's a little trick that sometimes we do when the hormones you just feel really stuck with the hormones. The other thing that we kind of think about with an individual that has what we're kind of considering hormone-based weight loss resistance is making sure that sleep is there, but a lot of times the issue is it would be great if it was there, but you can't get deep sleep because the hormones are off, right? So it's kind of a little bit of a vicious cycle. But also making sure that you're not exercising after the sun goes down. Little things that help mimic the body's natural rhythm, like resting when the sun goes down, sleeping when you lay in bed, those kinds of things will help support your natural rhythm. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if you're going to exercise, you're going to do cardio, you're going to do weights, you're going to even, I'm going to put massage here over on the side because sometimes massage can be more sedative and actually stimulate a person to sleep, to a deeper sleep, but it depends on what kind of massage, I guess. So we'll kind of use that as a little bit of an exception. But if you're going to do cardio and you're going to do weight bearing and you're dealing with hormonal imbalances, as soon as the sun goes down, time's up. We're not going to do it in the evening. What happens is that really flip-flops the body's natural circadian rhythm of rest and restoration and excitation. So there's a kind of a little tip that I have a lot of my clients do. The other piece with hormone imbalances that I tell a lot of my clients to do is we've got a couple of soups that have a lot of the cruciferous vegetables. So we've got a cabbage soup that has things like Brussels sprouts and broccoli and bok choy. Those kinds of soups to be eaten copiously throughout all of the phases of the fast metabolism diet can help be a catalyst to really flood the body with micronutrients. So those are just kind of some tricks that I deal with individuals that have hormone imbalances. And what I usually tell people to do, kind of for the first week, and ideally for the full 28 days, is kind of follow the program as it's written. Follow my rules. But I know that sometimes when the body's in such a state of disease that we've got to take a little bit into consideration in a real clinical environment, and that's why these DVDs, me being able to kind of sit down and talk with you a little bit more, find out what's going on, give us a way to just kind of listen and listen carefully. Don't just make these changes because you think, it'd be great to. I'm afraid of carbs, so I'm going to pull out carbs on that last third day of phase 3 of the fast metabolism diet, get some facts from your body first. Do a couple weeks, test your pH. If you're diabetic, make sure that you're testing your blood sugars. I cannot tell you that we can reverse things more quickly the more information we get from our bodies. Make sure that you're checking your pH, especially if you have mood and memory and cognition issues. And listen to the subtle changes and the subtle signs that your body tells you about success. And the other thing that you can do that's great is this is where some of that micro repair comes in. So as you're going through the 28 days of this holistic whole body rehab, right? And we go through these 28 days, it's really a journey in what your body has going on. It's really a journey in your body's strengths, and it's also a lot of times an expression of your body's weaknesses, and we all have them. So once you've kind of gathered this information and you've gone through this kind of holistic healing and you've really supported your body through its natural cycle, and we've rotated through the 2, 2, 3, 4 times, then maybe it's time to implement some of that micro repair, some of the stuff that's found in the burn, where you can go in and you can say, okay, I've cleaned the whole house. Now I'm going to get into the cabinets and see really what's going on in some of these very small places that can not seem large, but can create havoc in the body that can inhibit some of our success. So I hope some of those little tweaks can help bring you into our community. I would say you're my virtual client now. Our virtual clinic, our website, has so much information for you. No matter what you're dealing with, we're here for you. We've got all kinds of Q&A sessions. Make sure to post, and I wish you tremendous health.